All right, we're about 2 minutes past the hour, and I'm sure a couple more folks will trickle in, but thank you for joining us today. I am extremely pleased to have you with us here as we showcase the great work by our partners in Argentina, Brazil, and Zimbabwe. My name is Adam Sachs. I am a program manager for the Center for Digital Economy and Governance at the Center for International Private Enterprise, or CIPE. As you may know, CIPE works with private sector reformers and other civil society organizations in countries all over the world on a wide range of issues at the intersection of democratic and economic development. Since 2017, CIPE has implemented its digital economy programming, primarily focusing on supporting local businesses, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, to acquire knowledge and understanding of the complex technical, regulatory, and legal opportunities and barriers related to digital transformation. Earlier this year, CIPE launched the Center for Digital Economy and Governance, or CDEG, to build upon its multi-country efforts on digital economy reform and tackle new challenges at the intersection of technology, democracy, and markets, such as the governance of AI, promoting digital democracy, and countering the misuse and abuse of technologies. Understanding how digital innovations are transforming urban landscapes and impacting democratic governance is just one of the many lines of work we support at CDEG. As the world continues to move into the digital age, adopting emerging technologies is a top priority for businesses and governments alike, including municipalities. Smart city technologies like 5G, the Internet of Things, AI, and facial recognition are revolutionizing city management. They enhance public services, foster inclusivity, and boost economic opportunities. According to the OECD, the global smart city market is estimated to grow from 511 billion in 2022 to over $1 trillion by 2027. Yet, without proper regulatory frameworks, smart technologies can be exploited for authoritarian control. Surveillance technologies, irrespective of their origin, can threaten privacy and free expression. The rapid deployment of these technologies often outpaces the regulatory safeguards needed to protect democratic standards. For instance, in 2022, of the 36 World Economic Forum's pioneer cities, 80% of the cities acknowledge legal obligations for privacy and data protection, but less than 25% conduct privacy impact assessments when they deploy new technology. Thus, it is crucial to establish a multi-sectoral approach involving government, civil society, and the private sector to ensure these technologies uphold democratic values. Collaborative efforts and informed decision-making are essential. Our partners in Argentina, Brazil, and Zimbabwe are at the forefront of addressing these challenges. In Argentina, the Center for the Implementation of Public Policies Promoting Equity and Growth, or CIPPEC, evaluated the country's municipal digital transformation policy, providing key recommendations for ongoing improvements in local governance. In Brazil, InternetLab partnered with the city of Niteroi to create a guide outlining effective strategies and recommendations for adopting smart city technologies. In Zimbabwe, Paradigm Initiative analyzed the benefits and challenges of the nation's safe city initiatives, incorporating citizen and stakeholder feedback. To share their work and discuss how various stakeholders can contribute to a balanced and ethical integration of smart technologies in our cities, I have an outstanding panel. First, we have Bridget Jouveau, the Partnership and Engagements Officer at Paradigm Initiative, joining us from Zimbabwe. Next, we'll have Barbara Simo, consultant and former head of research for privacy and surveillance at InternetLab, joining us from Brazil. Finally, we have Amalia Peralta, the coordinator for state and government program at CIPPEC, joining us from Argentina. A special thank you to the panelists for your participation in today's event. And now let's get this conversation started. To kick us off, we have a presentation from Amalia. Amalia, over to you.
Good morning. Sorry. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to me to be here. And thank you, Adam, for the introduction. I am Amalia. I am based in Argentina, and I am the project coordinator of a state and government program in CIPPEC. And today I will present to you briefly the research that we have been leading during the last year about smart cities and digital public transformation here in Argentinian cities. Next slide. I don't know. Perfect. I would like to start reviewing some basic information about Argentina that I think that is important to fully understand some of the findings of our research. Argentina is a country located in South America with a population of more than 46 million people, and is the 8th largest country by area in the world. And it has a federal system of government with 3 levels of government: national level, state or provincial level, and municipal or local level. And I think that these last 2 features that I have mentioned are important to fully understand the great variety of realities that we can encounter across regions in Argentina. And it is the reason why we take as a unit of analysis the 23 main cities of each state and the city of Buenos Aires, which is the main district in Argentina. And next slide. So, the starting point of our research was the concept of digital public transformation. We focus on something that is a crucial aspect to make cities smarter, and this is the way in which governments incorporate new technologies to improve their relationship with citizens. We understand that governments all around the world are facing a true digital public transformation, and this implies that digital tools are transforming not only government processes, but also the way in which the relationship between citizens and government is forged. So we drew from OECD the concept of e-government and digital government for our research. So next slide. And here is the key question for in our research, because as I said, all around the world, governments are incorporating new technologies, but not all of them are doing it in the same way or at the same speed. So the question for us was how digital public transformation is taking place in Argentinian cities, and also which are the biggest challenges of this implementation. One of the main goals of our research was to answer this question and use the knowledge to boost and to improve the adoption of new technologies in local governments here in Argentina. So we designed a methodology that is in next slide, with 3 dimensions of analysis. We conducted a survey of norms and regulation related to digital transformation. We also conducted a survey of all state capital websites, and we also conducted 7 interviews with public officials of these cities. The analysis of these 3 dimensions was aimed to assessing the progress in digital transformation policies, from some basic changes to others, like the use of AI to improve government processes. So, till now, I have made an introduction about our research, and now I would like to share with you some of the main findings of our research. First of all, I would like to point out that in all cities that we have researched, the direct contact of local governments have with citizens is a key driver for improving the improvement of government processes. We found that the fact that local governments are the first point of contact for citizens is a strong incentive for them to improve digital services. Some of the top innovations in cities are focused on transparency, transactions, and other general digital public services related to citizens' needs and attention. The second main finding that I have to share is that we found that one of the main problems that local governments encounter is the lack of resources to implement digital public transformation, especially because it is almost impossible for them to retain specialized human resources. And this is because I will say this in a nutshell because it's a topic that we can discuss for hours, but basically salaries in public sector in Argentina are not competitive with those in private sector for teach careers, software engineers, and so on. So this is a big challenge for the implementation of digital public transformation in Argentina. But this finding is connected with our next finding, that is that we discovered in a way that private sector and civil society play an undeniable role in innovation within local government in Argentina. All top innovations in cities, including the use of AI to detect small illegal dump sites, for instance, were achieved through collaborations between local governments and private sector and civil society. And I refer specifically to a local ecosystem of startups, to enterprises and universities, local universities in each city. And after these findings, CIPPEC promotes the cooperation, this cooperation and generating spaces to cooperation of these three actors, because we consider it to be a key factor for the digital public transformation of local governments in Argentina. And finally, we have our last finding that I have to say that in Argentina, there is a lack of regulations regarding the use of AI and ethics in data management. This is an issue that is not prominent in public debate in Argentina, but we consider it to be essential for advising the incorporation of new technologies into government processes. CIPPEC proposes a stronger national level regulation to establish basic standards across the country regarding these issues. And I think that this is the last slide. I hope I have met the time requirements, Adam. And thank you all.
Thank you very much, Amalia, and absolutely. I mean, it's wonderful to really kind of see, you know, the insights that you found, and particularly, I mean, I think one of the main points that you really underscored is that citizens can help democracy deliver, and it really is the importance of citizen input to do that. So up next, we will pass it over to Bridget for her presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Adam. And hello, everyone. My name is Bridget Ndlovu, and I work with Paradigm Initiative as Partnerships and Engagements Officer. I am based in Zimbabwe, a country that is in the Southern African part of Zimbabwe. I say I don't see my slides up there, but I'm sure will be coming up soon. So I'm based in Zimbabwe, a country that is in the southern part of Africa. And Zimbabwe has a population of around 15 million people, according to the latest census that we just had in 2022. And you will notice that as I am giving this background, because when we conducted this study, we wanted to seek the perceptions of people within the country, and we wanted to find out their opinions and perceptions on smart city initiatives that are being conducted throughout the country. I think one of the other key things for us was that when we did this study, we wanted to make sure that we're contributing to the advancement of digital development within Zimbabwe, particularly with an interest to ensure that citizens within Zimbabwe are safe and there's efficiency in the delivery of smart city initiatives within the country. When we did this study within Zimbabwe, most of our respondents came from civil society actors, city council representatives, private sector representatives, the media, human rights defenders, law enforcement agents, and residents. And I think what was also interesting here was that we also got participants that were from the national human rights institutions, such as the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, within Zimbabwe. And our methodology in terms of what we were implementing, I see my slides have still not gone up there, but I'm sure they will any moment from now. Our methodology really comprised of desk research, review of national policies, online perception surveys, and key informant interviews. At some point, we wanted really to conduct focus group discussions, but we then decided it would work well to conduct key informant interviews, as these would provide in-depth information to the discussions that we were undertaking on smart city initiatives. And I'll just take you through the process of what we've managed to do within this year. So we conducted the research, we disseminated a survey to people within Zimbabwe and conducted the interviews. We drafted a report, which I'll be able to share on screen right at the end of my presentation. We also convened a policy engagement meeting where we met the different stakeholders that are particularly interested in smart city initiatives and smart city technologies within Zimbabwe. And it is within our plans also to further engage stakeholders on a biannual basis so that we're able to get their views even after the end of this project. And I think what we also found interesting in the conversation was that most of the respondents' perspectives on smart city initiatives were that while smart city initiatives are really important for detecting and preventing crime, enhancing access to local city councils and service delivery, and also people highlighted that these smart city initiatives were important for improving traffic management systems. They were also important for enhancing water management systems, as well as facilitating safety within the country. But although stakeholders indicated this, it was also quite interesting that some stakeholders feared that such initiatives may be used as weapons to target human rights defenders and critics of the government. I think one of the other interesting aspects about this research was that people were able to share their views freely without fear, and people were able to express their different viewpoints on smart city initiatives within the country. So we found that some respondents that participated in the survey indicated that while smart cities may mean safe citizens for some, they may have a chilling effect on others, which is something that is notable in many countries that are implementing smart city initiatives. And then when we look at the government priorities within the country with regard to smart cities and smart city development in the country, Zimbabwe already has the National Development Strategy 1. I'm on the next slide. Zimbabwe already has the National Development Strategy 1, which kicked off in 2021 and lapsed in 2025. So this strategy is very important and key in the country in terms of determining any ICT projects, any smart city initiatives that come up. And then there is also the Zimbabwe Cyber City project, where the government is already conducting this project, and already we have the parliament building already set there, and other initiatives are going to be placed around that particular project. We also recently had the Smart Zimbabwe Master Plan, which was recently just approved. And while implementing this project, these were some of the key interesting priorities that we identified. And even at local level, so some of the projects that I've highlighted here are mostly with regard to the policies, but we also have city-specific projects such as surveillance camera installations. In December last year, we had the second largest city in Zimbabwe, Bulawayo. The local authority collaborated with a private sector entity and announced that they would be installing surveillance cameras throughout the city. But what was also interesting to us was that consultations were not done for this particular process. And I think I'll get into some of those challenges. And then another key project was that within Harare, for example, there are projects such as smart city street light installations with built-in cameras that are already within planning stage. And then we have some cities such as Victoria Falls that have publicly shared that they are implementing geographic information systems to track water billing within their jurisdiction, as well as smart city parking systems, which are already being implemented in Harare, as well as in Bulawayo, but with concerns from the public. I added there the Vision 2030, which is also part of government's priorities, which highlights that government prioritize ICTs, and this is also a key policy within the Zimbabwean context when in relation to ICTs and smart cities. Next slide, please. I think also, like I said, I was going to go into the challenges. Most of the challenges that were highlighted by respondents to this particular research were that there is generally lack of transparency on procurement processes. There's also lack of adequate consultations. There is lack of transparency on data protection procedures to safeguard citizens from privacy breaches. And also, as part of the key challenges were that surveillance of ordinary citizens is bound to happen when surveillance cameras are put in place at different areas, particularly without those particular consultations. And respondents also stressed that there would be need for transparency in the purchase of cybersecurity and facial recognition equipment, so that they are also involved, and this will help solve most of the dangers that are likely to come about and most of the ethical concerns that are likely to come about. And then I put in there some of the recommendations that we put out as part of this research. So I did not put all recommendations that we highlighted, but we did highlight recommendations to government. We had recommendations to the media, but considering our audience here today, we put in our recommendations on the role of the private sector. So we highlighted after conducting this research that there is need to safeguard the data that is collected through smart city initiatives, particularly looking at the fact that Zimbabwe already has the Cyber and Data Protection Act, and there are specific sections that highlight the protection of data from negligent or unauthorized destruction. And then we also highlighted that there is definitely need for privacy impact assessments, which will really help in identifying and assessing the potential privacy risks of smart city initiatives. So when we looked at this, we thought that this is something that will not apply only to Zimbabwe, but in the different contexts as well. And then we also noticed another recommendation that there is need for transparency in data protection mechanisms for collecting data through digital technologies, and also adherence to national policies and technical standards, as well as human rights commitments. I think what was really interesting also is that most of the times when such initiatives are implemented, regard for human rights is rarely at the center of the conversation. But the fact that we had representatives from the national human rights institutions attending this conversation, this really helped a lot, because they also committed to making sure that our recommendations are used within their work with local authorities. And we also prescribed a recommendation that there is need for private sector to engage in PPPs, public-private partnerships that support human rights respecting practices. And with those few words, I hope I'm still within my time. Thank you so much. And on the last, I would like the last slide. On the last slide, you will see a barcode which you can scan to access the reports. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present our findings and the work that we've done in partnership with CIPE. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bridget. And I mean, you really hit on a couple of really key points there. I mean, the dual use of the technology, it can be, offer so many opportunities, but the way that you said it, right, it can also have a chilling effect on others. And I think that is definitely quite powerful. And it's great that, you were able to really bring the human rights component to the forefront, as it often is that afterthought. We're going to pass things over to Barbara now for her presentation. So Barbara, over to you.
Hi, Adam. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon in Brazil, good morning in the US, and depending on the region that you're at. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this event. And thank you also to CIPE for the support throughout this project that we've developed. Well, my name is Barbara. I'm from Brazil. I'm from São Paulo, and I work at InternetLab. I am former head of research for privacy and surveillance, and now I'm working at InternetLab as a consultant, which is a think tank online technology, also based in São Paulo. And we have this interest in develop studies and research papers that understand how technology is being developed by the governments and which should be the issues and questions arise so that we can have a more adequate environment, legal and institutional environment to deal with all the new technologies that are now arising. And well, this project, I think you can pass to the next slide, is a story of a partnership between InternetLab and the city of Niteroi, as Adam mentioned in the beginning. And InternetLab, as a research center, participated in the process of development of the Brazilian Charter for Smart Cities. It's basically a document that outlines some recommendations on the development of smart cities in Brazil. It has a specific concept. It brings in a specific concept of smart city that gathers different perspectives, and also the need to think of smart city as a concept attached to the local demands of the populations, to the local population. So what are the struggles, the needs of these specific populations, and which should be the ways to adequately improve the quality of life for Brazilian people in general. So this document brings a lot of recommendations and outlines different principles to do that, and to promote inclusive, people-centered digital transformation. But despite these outlined objectives, what we've seen in the last few years since the document was approved, it's a non-binding document, so it has this like recommendation purpose. But what we've seen is that many recommendations there doesn't have the practice way of putting in practice those things that are they're designed as guidelines and recommendations to the city. So cities don't have sufficient knowledge or resource constraints, and this can hinder the impact and the integration of digital transformation with respect to human rights. So based on this previous diagnosis that we've had, we developed this partnership with the city of Niteroi, which is part of the city's Coalition for Digital Rights, a network of cities around the world that is interested in developing projects and initiatives that address the digital rights within the population, within the population of the city. And we started this collaboration to initiate a project on digital services and human rights. So they have these guidelines, they have this methodology of developing digital services with respect to human rights. And then we, after some initial conversations, we decided to develop a guide that outlines effective strategies and recommendations for cities that want to pass through a process of developing a digital services to their community. So next slide. So we started this process of developing this resource together, and involved different contributions from various sources to understand at first the struggles the public servants had when they were thinking of digital rights topics. And second, which were the recommendations that us, a civil society and a research center, would give to a city that were interested in developing digital services with respect to human rights. So we had, at the end of last year, a really interesting workshop with public servants in which we explored challenges that they had on those topics, especially democratic participation in public services, data protection and privacy, diversity and digital inclusion, and transparency and social control. And in this workshop, they openly shared what they thought, their thoughts and struggles and difficulties with addressing some of these topics, and also what they thought it would be interesting solutions to deal with these topics within the city hall. So it was super interesting because we get to listen to 30 people, 20-something, 30 people directly from the city of Niteroi, and they were not familiar with digital rights concepts or necessarily with specific topics that we were addressing. So it was interesting to see also how they reacted to what we were saying. And based on the discussion and the results that we've had, we formulated some key recommendations and concrete suggestions that were then then passed through a consultation process with other civil society organizations that InternetLab has contact with, and get some input from them, some feedback from them to create a better resource that we're considering every stakeholder involved. So you can pass to the next slide. Then we developed this guide, this resource, and we have key recommendations based on 5 categories. First, access to digital technologies. Second, inequalities and accessibility. Third, user research and service redesign for vulnerable populations. Transparency in digital rights, in digital services, and privacy and data protection. Each one emphasizes needs and actions tailored to the specific needs of digital public service users. And it's super important for us to consider the access quality, because Brazil is a country with deep inequalities regarding access, not only access itself, but also quality of access. So the majority of low-income population in Brazil doesn't have access to broadband connection, and their data caps are really limited. So they only use internet through their cell phones with a limited data cap. So this is important for us to consider also which should be the range of a digital service, and also how to develop this, having in mind the needs and concerns of the populations that should be affected by it, and if benefited by it, if a public policy is in place. Also, we have recommendations regarding digital literacy, because, well, especially elderly people, they struggle more using technology. So one of our recommendations is that cities should have like digital helpers for some kinds of population to show people how to use the service, and really going to the process of using that service with that person that might struggle a bit with the technology. And also, one thing that many cities are starting to develop here are the chatbots. So they have a chatbot, and things are at the beginning automated, but we specifically mention in our guide that even if a chatbot is put at place, that the possibility of speaking to a human being should exist and be presented to the person, because, well, it's basically a human right to be able to speak with a human person when trying to deal with a demand that someone has. We also have recommendations addressed to transparency issues. In Brazil, we have this law. We have the transparency law in Brazil, public transparency law, but we also have a law that is called the law for users of public services. And this law in Brazil has the specific rule that cities should put at place a list, a charter, a letter with a list of all the public services that are available to the population. And it should also include the ways that these people should connect and reach the city hall to have access to the services. So we put also this recommendation that this letter should be easily available to the population, to the public, and the city hall website or in their channel to connect with their citizens. And also we have recommendations related to privacy and data protection. And it's interesting, and this topic is interesting because it was one of the topics that raised the biggest part of questions when we were conducting the workshop with the public services servants from the city hall. They had many questions related to, whoa, but how should I be compliant, or what are the requirements for data processing? What are the we have many issues related to data processing among different secretariats, and they had many questions related to it. So it was interesting at first to see how they were anxious about this topic. I think it's also interesting mentioning that the Brazilian data protection law, it's relatively recent. It entered into force in 2020, so it has like 3 years and a half of proper execution. And many cities are still struggling a bit to understand what are the requirements, the specific requirements, and how to be compliant with it. So we also brought many recommendations related to privacy and data protection in that sense, considering the need to minimize data collection practices, always having in mind what is the specific need associated with the data that is being collected, and also improving data portability so that citizens would need only to give their data once and not many times again and again and again. So these were some of our recommendations that we had in this topic. So this is a brief overview of what we brought into these guidelines. And I think it's also worth mentioning that it will be part of the learning track of new public servants that enter the city of Niteroi. And we are starting a process to get this nationally, get this guide to be also shared nationally. So we have the National School of Public Administration, and it has also learning tracks for public servants. And we are starting this process so that this guide this resource is also put into the learning track of all public servants that pass through the National School of Public Administration. And due to a partnership that we've had along the UN Habitat, that was also a partner with the city of Niteroi in one of their projects, we will be able to translate those guidelines into English, because now they're only in Portuguese. So we will be able to translate it into English, and then we'll have an English version of it pretty soon, I think, probably next month. And this is really interesting because then we will have possibly the possibility of sharing it with different cities across the globe. Well, that's it. I think you can pass to the final slide. This is a picture of the city of Niteroi. It's a beautiful city. It's in the state of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And I think you were all welcome to come to Brazil if you want to. And that's it. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you for the invitation to Brazil as well. I really hope I can get there one day, and really it's great to really see the collaboration that you've had, that InternetLab has had with the city of Niteroi, and really kind of looking at that partnership there. At this point, we are going to transition today's discussion to a broader discussion with everyone here. If you have any questions, please post that into the Q&A function. I do see that we have some questions already, which is wonderful. And then I'll also ask the speakers to be somewhat brief as we have a lot of different aspects to cover in a short amount of time. But really to really kick off this discussion portion, I'd really love to pose to you all, reflecting on your research, in what ways do smart cities influence local democratic rights, and what measures can be taken to ensure these rights are protected? Would anyone like to kick us off?
I can go. I can go first. Well, first of all, thank you, Barbara and Brigitte. I really enjoyed listening to you both. And regarding your question, I have to say that cities in Argentina are in an early stage of becoming smart cities. And at this stage, I think that the benefits of incorporating new technology into citizens' life are evident in the way in which technology can improve different aspects of citizens' life, like transportations, make cities safer, and make them accessible for all of them. Technology has the potential to facilitate the relationship between people and the states, making communication and administrative procedure easier. And we consider this an improvement in democracy, especially for populations that have historically had fewer opportunities to interact with the state. However, I must also say that in this early stage, it is difficult to foresee the risks and hazards here in Argentina that this innovation in the use of technology could pose for governments. And in Argentina, we don't have a serious debate about cybersecurity, data privacy, and correct procedures for acquiring new technologies. And that's why one of the key points for CIPPEC is the necessity of generating national level regulation with basic standards to safeguard democratic rights, while advancing in the process of making cities smarter. In this regard, I think that the insights from other countries with more experience in these issues, such as US, and I think that are really informative for us.
Thank you for that. And are there any others who'd like to contribute?
Yeah, I can go next. Adding to, sorry, my microphone was off. Adding to it, I think it's important to think that smart cities projects in general shouldn't be attached from the specific needs of a local community. I think, especially in Brazil, we have many cities in general, states in general, that wish to acquire technology for technology's sake only, and not considering the specific impact that that technology may have over population. And many times this interest in acquiring technology is for surveillance purposes instead of different purposes, such as, well, helping the management of water flows or of electricity, or even to provide specific assistance in case of emergencies, climate emergencies, or things like that, that also happened recently in Brazil the last semester. So many rights can be impacted by the use of technologies, and those rights should be put into the first place when a city is interested in acquiring technologies or having public-private partnerships at place to develop projects, the smart cities projects. So I think I would give this also answer to this question.
Absolutely, having the local community in mind. Bridget?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to add that I think it's really a pertinent question, because when we look at the conversation on smart cities, I mean, development of an installation of smart city equipment may really infringe on freedom of assembly. It may also infringe on basic civil and political rights of citizens within a specific country, because when citizens feel that they are under surveillance, then it limits their freedom of association, it limits their freedom of expression, and ideally also it mostly infringes on their right to privacy, because now they are living in fear. But of course, we do acknowledge that smart cities are important for the development of societies, but they do sometimes can affect the democratic rights of citizens within a specific country, especially if consultations are not done appropriately. I think I'll leave there for now.
Yeah, and actually that's a perfect bridge to my next question, which is really how can different stakeholders, whether it's the government, private sector, civil society, really collaborate, particularly during those consultations, but really to effectively oversee and ensure the ethical implementation of smart city projects. I'll even actually add in a question that we've received from the audience to be a little bit more specific for our CIPE audience here, but how can the business community support these efforts, both as creators and users of technology? Would anyone like to address that? Maybe Amalia, might you be able to help us?
Yes, of course. Well, I like this question because it allows me to revisit some points I shared during my presentation, but Barbara and Brigitte too. Well, I think that it's pretty obvious by now that the role of government is crucial, not only in incorporating new technologies, but also in doing so following proper procedures and ensuring transparency. As we have mentioned, we are promoting the advancement of better regulation and standards by national government in Argentina to ensure the ethical implementation of a smart city project. But I think that, as Barbara said, the role of think about the local people and their necessities is something that I think that is on the back of the governments too. Second of all, I think that private sector in Argentina has demonstrated its importance as a potential key actor in the development of smart cities. So I consider this sector must be willing to commit to ethical guidelines, ensure transparency, and protect data that is collected from smart city initiatives. And finally, the civil society, we consider that must advocate for citizens' rights and push for participatory spaces that allows people to be involved in smart cities, not only as users, but also as active citizens who are informed about the transformation happenings in their cities and feel secure about them. And that.
Barbara or Bridget, anything else to add?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I'd like to add on that. Just to say that some of the ethical considerations that can be taken into account are that when smart cities are being deployed, they are likely to perpetrate bias in terms of making sure that they are likely to perpetuate bias in terms of discriminatory service provision or law enforcement. And then this would mean that governments that are deploying smart city initiatives should make sure that whichever private sector is applying those technologies is ensuring that those technologies have a specific design within their technologies to ensure that they do not perpetrate bias, and they should also ensure that these technologies have privacy by design built into these particular technologies. And maybe just to weigh in on the question around how a private sector can collaborate. So I think that the private sector can engage in public-private partnerships with governments, but also making sure that these partnerships ensure that the technology is human rights respecting. And this would really go a long way in making sure that there is a respect for human rights, even in the implementation of smart city technology. And just as a last point in response to that, just to say that even when local authorities purchase these technologies, they should ensure that there is transparency in the procurement, and private sector should also be transparent in its dealings. And this will make the deployment of smart cities much better. Thank you.
Absolutely. The design and the collaboration. Barbara, over to you.
Yeah, I think Amalia and Bridget covered basically a lot of what I would say, but I think it's really important for us to think that, well, I'm not sure how this works in different countries, but at least in Brazil, many cities are acquiring these types of technologies for free. They are donated by private actors, and they are developed as free technologies that they're using by the city. And this is something that should be properly addressed and put into concern, because this jumps procedures that are super important for democratic cities to pass through, such as the risk assessments, commits to ethical guidelines, and procurement rules that Bridget and Amalia mentioned. So also having this concern with not everything that is acquired for free is something good for the population, and these agreements can have a bigger cost when they end at the end of 6 months to a year or to 5 years or so, because they will have a cost to the public administration afterwards, and that's something that should also be considered. Also how people's data are handled in these contracts, and those things that I think they were already properly mentioned. So that's it.
Thank you. And now we'll pivot over to some of the questions that we've received from the audience. This first question is really hoping to look at the context of the citizens' role in shaping digital rights policies. And some of these projects here did touch on some of the perception of citizens. And so the question gets to, how can we overcome the challenge of convincing citizens to participate in surveys in countries where they are typically reluctant to engage? Perhaps, Bridget, I know that there was a lot of perception surveys within your work. Might you be able to respond to this?
Yeah, sure, I can. And thank you so much for that question, Kaula. And then I think one of the critical things here would be that it's very important to give background of why a specific study is being conducted. This really helps in making sure that the objectives are set, and whoever is responding to the survey knows why they are contributing to this survey and of what importance is that survey to them. And another thing that I think is also important is being able to highlight if this is an anonymous survey or this is a survey where specific respondents will be quoted. I mean, depending on the country where you come from, it is always better to make sure there's anonymity built into the survey so that respondents are free to highlight their concerns and share ideas of how specific initiatives can be improved. And then another thing also would be that besides the aspect of anonymity, if you then want to quote specific people, then key informant interviews are also a good way of reaching out to very knowledgeable people within that specific sector who are willing also to be publicly known that they contributed to such. I'm sure as you go through our report, you will see that there are some areas where some people's names were mentioned because they consented to that, and they were happy to consent to that because it is part of the work that they do, or it is part of the work that they are very interested in. So I think that would be my response for now.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything else to add? If not, I'm happy to go to the next question. Sure, Barbara.
Yeah, maybe connecting to citizens associations that might be easier to convince associations to engage than citizens, isolated citizens. So having in mind the issues, the specific work that they do, as Bridget also mentioned. So that's just this specific thing that I would like to mention.
Great idea. And yeah,
And I think
citizens.
also,
Yep.
sorry, but this is more radical change maybe, but I also think that having more education in schools about democratic rights and digital rights is something important to have, like, in the back of our minds, thinking on these topics, because I think that is necessary change the perception of people generally about these topics and make more evidence the importance of each person be compromised with these topics, basically. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And absolutely, to your point, Amalia, I mean, CIPE has developed a new resource, the business case for digital rights, which really does help individuals understand what is, why it's important to engage on this topic. We are unfortunately getting to time. I know that there was a final question around climate change and sustainability. But maybe in your closing remarks, if you want to add and address that, but would really love to hear from each of you, just some final thoughts before we take off. Amalia, maybe over to you.
Yes. Sorry. Perfect. No, yes, I think that climate changes are a really interesting topic, and I think that smart cities has a lot to do with this. In Argentina, as I said, we are in early stages of this development, and I think that part of the discussion of having a national regulation have to address these topics. But I also want to say, to close my presentation, is that this kind of a space with cities from all around the world are really helpful to us to think about which things we have to take into our minds to think the smart cities in our country. So thank you for all your presentations.
Thank you. How about you, Barbara?
Yeah, about the question on climate changes, climate emergency, sorry. I'm not familiar with a specific initiative on that, but I know that many cities in Brazil are starting to develop some alerts, emergency climate alerts that alert the community of something that might happen and how the cities should be structured to deal with that emergency when it starts. But the thing is, we have a vast number of cities in Brazil, and only a small part of the cities in Brazil are starting to develop things like that, and this is a concern, especially of I talked recently to a representative from the Ministry of Communications and Technology and Science, and she mentioned this was a concern because she was tracking different smart cities initiatives with having the quality of life of the population in mind, and like the amount is really low considering the amount of cities in Brazil is something like 150 cities that are starting to develop projects like this. So it's still low amount of cities considering the pressing need of a demand like this, because climate emergencies are starting to get very more usual than they were some years before, and the impacts that they can have over the population in general. So I just have this specific thing in mind.
Wonderful, thank you. And Bridget, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. So I think my remarks would be that, especially to governments, public consultations are really important, and they will help governments gather public opinions on specific bills, laws, and smart city initiatives that are being conducted in different countries. And this will ensure that even when they are adopted, the citizens have already endorsed and said, this is what we want. And just another point to highlight that one of the key things that I really think we should mention here is that if not streamlined for inclusivity, smart city initiatives may infringe on the rights of persons with disabilities, particularly with regard to access to information. For instance, we see a lot of local authorities developing applications and chatbots, but when it comes to accessibility, persons with disabilities, particularly those with visual impairment, may not be able to see. So it is also the onus of local authorities and civil society, as well as the private sector, to collaborate and make sure that these applications are responsive to the needs of persons with visual impairment, by including maybe things like text to voice capabilities in these particular instances. So that's just what I have for now, and thank you so much to CIPE for organizing this.
Thank you, Bridget. And that is a terrific point, right? Really kind of thinking about the different communities that are involved within an ecosystem, within a city, and how we can interact with that. And really, at the end of the day, I do want to point you to the papers that were shared in the link. You can explore more about the terrific research that each of these individuals and organizations have conducted, as well as our business case for additional rights. I really hope today's discussion inspires you to consider more deeply about how cities are transforming and how we interact with it and maybe can shape the transformation of our own cities. So thank you very much for your time. Very appreciative of our panelists' time, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.